Photography Daily is a Loading Zone production.
Having to make the photo walk early in the morning because if I do it mid-morning onwards, at the moment in the UK we're experiencing a heat wave, and for Barney, Sir Barkalot, he goes to sleep at about 10:30 in the morning, wakes up at about 10:30 at night. Then he's ready for action. Yeah, it's very hot for him. We did have his summer cut only 2-3 weeks ago, and but already it's come back as a bouffon. Let me just get my first picture of the day. That's wonderful. Look at the shape of this tree. Fantastic. I'm walking in woodland because I thought that would be a good idea. Even now the sun is sort of really bursting through the canopy. 500th F4. Look at that tree. There we go. One more. First shot of the day. Sketchbook image done. Come on, Barney. Let's go this way. Come on.
The Foreword.
Just a moment ago, I'm walking on an estate which we've walked on before called Wasing Park, the Wasing Estate. And there is, at the end of this long path, apparently, it's where they hold their retreats and wild water swimming, or is it wild river swimming? Wild water, cold water anyway. And I met the chap who owns the estate, his wife Di. I met her as she was running, and we got talking about their retreats. And I talked about the retreat we've got coming up in Scotland, which I'm really looking forward to in September. And she said, "Why don't you come and have a retreat here?" I'd never thought about having one 15 minutes from my front door. But this is a magnificent place. The woods, the woodland, the forest here, the wild water swimming. Not sure about that bit. But yeah, maybe a retreat to announce for the winter. Anyway, I'm not taking my own advice very well today because I'm walking through long grass here. And it is tick season. Barney, you and I are going to be doing tick watch. We are. He looks completely disinterested. He's been doing a lot of running off of late. Not very good with recall. Any advice on recall? Gladly taken. One 11-month-old, nearly 11-month-old cockapoo with a mind of its own. Come on, Barkalot, this way. Come on. What have you found now? Come on. Right, weekend just gone. I was photographing at a wedding venue where rustic met modern, or meets modern, in the east of England, in a county called Suffolk. I didn't know, by the way, that Suffolk was named after Southfolk. That's how it gets its name, Southfolk, which is why the county above is called Norfolk. So you get Northfolk and Southfolk. Really, actually, it's not in the north or the south. It should just be called Eastfolk. Careful, Neil. Eastfolk. Suffolk. Neil, quit while you're ahead. All right. Anyway, it's known as the Curious County, and it has lots of art luminaries to its name. We've got Sir John Constable, who was the painter version of Ansel Adams, and Benjamin Britten, the magnificent composer, and Ed Sheeran. You know Ed. I know Ed, Neil. So yes. Oh, and not forgetting, there's a very important river actually called the River Orwell, which funnels traffic out into the sea, and it's where Eric Blair, yes, it inspired him, the River Orwell, to change his name to become George Orwell. Mine of information this morning, but back to the story. So I'm in this venue, wonderfully nowhere place, in this rustic meets modern, as I said, nestled between these lush green meadows and very English villages, Sons Starbucks, at an events venue owned by a very decorated former art director and his wife, who is a stylist. And they've made this place looks amazing. It's wonderful. It really is. But during dinner, the art director came and spent a little bit of time with me. We were having a chat and we were talking about photography. We were talking about his career. And he said to me, I might get the words in the wrong order, but roughly they were, Neil, you can't shoot weddings and really be taken seriously as a fashion photographer. Not that I was thinking of sailing my schooner down the River Orwell and onward toward London's bright lights to become a fashion photographer, but all the same, I like to have options, and he completely stopped me in my tracks, really. I thought, who says I can't? Him? The industry? People's perceptions? On a much grander scale, life and history is beautifully blessed with people doing things they were told they can't. I give you South African President Mandela, who was told you can't be president, or a writer called Stephen King, who was rejected 30 times by every publisher going, it seemed. One even said, you can't write. This is a waste of everyone's time. So driving home late Saturday night, I got to thinking about what to call today's Photowalk show, and 4 words came to mind. Do what you can't. And Monday morning, I sat down in my writer's seat, which, by the way, has a list now. I definitely lean physically to my left when I write. And I started with episode 318, tap, 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 tappity tap, do what you can't. I reclined with an air of self-satisfaction and that Joey nod from Friends. The, how you doing? I've just had a great idea nod. But then I remembered there was a film made just shy of 4 minutes long by a YouTuber called Casey Neistat, which he made 5 years ago when he was doing his daily vlogs. Now, you might not be aware of Casey Neistat, or you will be aware, but you're just not that au fait with what he did. Maybe you're not a follower. Maybe it's not your cup of Darjeeling. But, well, he's still a YouTuber, though he no longer makes daily films about his life and about making stuff. I was told he's very, very talented at making his films about making stuff. But he was told he couldn't be in the movies because he didn't go to film school. But guess what? He ended up making movies. He wanted to have a TV show, but somebody said, you can't, Casey. You're not pretty enough. Then he ended up having a big HBO season with his brother. Anyway, this film that Casey made, which I will put on the show page, The Foot, it starts with him writing with a thick black indelible marker pen on a sheet of glass the words, which he also narrates, to everyone that's ever told anyone with a dream they can't, this video's for you. The camera angle then pulls right back, and the message is smashed into 1,000 pieces with a swing of a big baseball bat. Smash! And so starts this this short, very sharp, I think very inspiring film about being a creator and not listening to the doubters, least of all your own voice. It's a film for a definite audience, for sure, but I think the overriding message for anybody who cares to watch is absolutely spot on. Don't listen to those who doubt. Don't listen to a doubt that you fed, because that's just as debilitating. Simply do what you can't. And I think my guest's message is one of do what you can't today. Chris Harrison, despite not having worked for many years due to extreme anxiety, an illness that's still affecting him today, one that threatens at times to lock him completely in his room, is making a project where he gets out onto the streets of Newcastle and he's shooting 1,000 portraits of people.
Today on the Photowalk.
People said, it's a silly idea, They just said, you're not going to get 1,000 great portraits.
And then Hannah Gimblett, a familiar name to those who are in our wonderful Facebook group, who despite being bedbound herself, having sometimes just a few fog-free hours of a day and very much in a day-to-day conversation with chronic fatigue, or ME, has just produced the work for her first photographic exhibition.
Because when I was approached about the exhibition, you always doubt yourself, don't you? There's that imposter syndrome that you've spoken about on the show, and whether you can do it or not, whether your photography is up to scratch.
Stories of life told by photographers, and today those stories come from Hannah Gimblett and Chris Harrison, with further inspirational voices lending us their thoughts, those being Charlie Phillips and Gabrielle Matola, plus of course you.
This is a Vive la Défense kind of photography podcast, made from and by the letters that you send in, the thoughts you have, and words from our special inspirational guests as we take a photo walk together. Whatever you photograph with, be it a film camera, a mirrorless digital, or what's described as the original selfie camera, the Minolta 7 disc from the early 80s, which was very forward-thinking as it had a small telescopic handle which enabled you to hold it at a good arm's length and take pictures through a control on the stalk of yourself at a time when selfie really was the slang used if you were meeting your mates outside Selfridges as a landmark. Where are we meeting? Selfies. Okay, see you at 1. This isn't a show that will make you feel a little lost if you don't know the history of art or still can't work out the inverse square law of light. It's about how we feel when we make pictures, what it does for us, what it does for others. And that's why I take a walk with your letters and stories so that I can share your ideas with a community of fellow photo walkers. In the mailbag today then, what does a mundane picture actually mean or look like? Rejection on the streets when you ask for a portrait. Siberia calling, yes, they're listening, you know, in Russia, still. All hell the 28mm focal length. A roundup of the latest 365s as we enter the home straight. Covered in coloured powders in India. And being more one-to-one with your work. Forgetting about the likes and algorithms. So, shall we walk then? Checklist out, coffee and Garibaldi's packed, check, boots on and laced, check, walking trousers or shorts, long socks for those who walk amongst the ticks, it's that time of year, well here anyway, check, spare batteries, check, memory cards or spare film, check, earbuds in, check, lens caps off, let's walk.
Before we start today with your letters, we've got some cracking letters today in the mailbag. Thank you so much for those that you're sending in. If you want to buy or sell or trade camera kit, used camera kit, and you live in America, the UK or Europe, and you haven't been to mpb.com yet, where have you been? You need to visit them at some point today. Each week at the head of the show, you'll be familiar that I mention mpb.com because back in 2020, they said, we can see what you're trying to do here, and we'd like to be part of helping it to grow. And they've been with us ever since. It doesn't really matter what kind of photography that you're into, whether it's street or studio or social or macro or touring or action, and I'm running out of genres. Then mpb.com have kit that speaks to your camera bag and helps photographers like me and like you to tell our unique stories. And I use them myself. I've recently bought some lenses through them for my various setups. Another great thing about using them is that they're part of the circular economy and sustainability being more important than ever. This is one of the key reasons that I'm absolutely thrilled that they're here with us. They don't use bubble wrap when they send stuff out to you. And if you're buying, and this is really important, you get a guarantee. And I think that's vital when you're buying and selling quality used camera kit. Go to mpb.com. Right, letters. We are starting with one from Kim. Kim? Do you mean Kim Cofield from Australia Land, Neil? Ah, you know her. Yes, I do. But for our other listener, who may not, I'm going to leave a link to her blog on the show page today because I'd love for you to go visit her thoughts and work. Anyway, she's not long joined our special community here, and I got a letter with a picture for the Monday Assignment show, which was set by Alex Kilby on the 20th of June. It was episode 311. It was all about making pictures of the mundane, which reminds me, I need to upload mine. Shouldn't be difficult for you, Neil. You make plenty of mundane pictures. Yes, I walked straight into that one, didn't I? Anyway, I wanted to read a little of the letter that she sent in. Actually, two letters. I was inspired, she said, by the mundane assignment. It's a practice I have in my photography toolkit to look closer at what might not be noticed and see if I can make an okay image out of it. Though instead of calling it mundane, I refer to this practice as noticing small moments of everyday beauty. So the photo I'm sending you is a is of a section of tin on my back veranda roof at home. I love the abstractness of it, and it proves my theory that beauty is everywhere if you only just look for it. Also, says Kim, I wanted to thank you for your discussions about mental health and photography. Photography helps ease my anxiety. I find I can slip into the flow of photography and my anxiety takes a complete backseat. It's not the cure, but it's rather a tool in my belt to help me live with anxiety. Oh, we found this pond. Oh, wonderful. Are you tempted, Barnes? Are you tempted for a swim, are you? Are you? He's pulling on his lead. Yeah, I'm tempted. Can you swim here? Is it shallow enough? So that was the first letter, and I wrote back to say that I'd taken a look at her blog and I was genuinely really taken by it. And there are plenty of Kim's stories that I'd like to tell and talk about on the show. And so in return, I got this letter back. This is like that show called Letter Trail. Was it called Letter Trail? Oh, it was ages ago. Letter Trail. I'll look it up for you. Anyway, in return, I got this back. I'd love to chat with you, said Kim, although I'm not sure I have anything to say that would be of any worth to anybody. I haphazardly post to my blog, often wondering what the point is. Then I wonder if maybe something I write can help someone, somewhere. Now, this was, of course, a kind of private conversation we were having, so I did ask permission to share this, but I think, Kim, that perhaps without knowing it, you've hit the proverbial nail on the head. I was always told in radio, and I think this can be applied to any time that you're sharing your words, whether they're in a blog or you're photographing to make a story, maybe broadcasting your thoughts, that you're only ever talking to one person. If you can talk to one person and think of it as a conversation, whatever you're creating with one person, you'll form a much more intimate association or relationship with, I suppose you can call it your audience. In other words, speak, photograph, paint, write, create for one person. And by the way, that one person can be you, which I know sounds odd, but yeah, it can be you. And you'll make it this sort of intimate experience, and mean it. It's not just lip service. Really take that conversation as the way that you feel. Not only will you find those that you want to talk to and with, and they'll warm to you more as a person, but and arguably more importantly, you de-stress yourself and you stop worrying about the likes and the algorithms and who or who not may read your words, but it all starts, definitely starts with just one person. Anyway, Barney, come this way, come on. He's going off. Where are you going? I was looking that way. I know you were, but we're going this way. I've included a link to Kim's blog. Her latest stories I suppose are really quite emotional, actually, about her beautiful dog, Cadell. I hope I've said Cadell's name correctly. And as you journey back, though, through Kim's blog, there's stories about gratitude, and there's a great piece that starts with an abstract double exposure in photography about observation. And then I did spy the following words in a piece called Update. It has, again, been too long between posts, Kim writes, and I want to write here, I really do. What stops me is the hang-up I have about writing. I was told for a very long time my love of writing was a waste of time. And when you hear something enough, you start to believe it. It's sad but true. My heart sank a bit when I read those words. It says, I think, Kim, it says more about the people that have said that than it says about you or your writing or anything that you ever create. And I want you to say the title of today's show with me, Kim. Come on, say it together. Barney, can you say this as well? You're showing entire disinterest. Sorry, Kim. But all together now, 4 words. Do what you can't. Those 4 words are ringing in my ears today. Though actually, in your case, Kim, it's do what you can do very well and don't listen to those who say you can't. So I've altered it slightly. Only it's going to be trickier to fit on a T-shirt. I appreciate. So Kim, I'm really pleased that we've now talked, and I'm so looking forward to reading more of your work and seeing the pictures that accompany your words. Now, Kim came here because she follows the wonderful Gabrielle Matola, who shared our podcast on her social channel. So You know me. I like to play something inspirational between our letters. So here is Gabrielle talking to me only recently, actually, talking about rejection, more specifically how she deals with somebody who's refusing a portrait on the street.
I haven't gotten over my fear of rejection. I face it almost every time I make a picture and every time I get a no. What it is I've learned how to handle that in a way that doesn't stop me the next time. To answer your question, yes and no. No, I haven't gotten over my fear of rejection. What I've done is I've changed my relationship to it. So if somebody rejects me, I get past it a lot quicker, and I get back on the horse. I move on to the next one. Sometimes as quickly as possible. And it stings. It does. It stings a little bit, but I don't have to hold on to that sting. And I also have learned that it's never about me. I don't have to internalize that rejection. It's about the other person. It's what they're going through. It's their, they probably, they may say no to everybody. It's not about you. And that's really helpful, I think. And not just in photography, but life.
That's Gabrielle Matola. And actually, Gabrielle's setting some assignments. I'm not sure. It may be Gabrielle on Monday, or it could be somebody else. I've recorded a few assignment shows of late. Watch this space, or hear what I say at the end of the show. Right. If you'd like to send your stories, your pictures in, and I'd love to hear from you, send them to me to the email address, which is studio@photographydaily.show. Studio@photographydaily.show. 2,000 pixels wide, please. Or if you're shooting on smartphones, which I know some of you are, and that's fine, it's a camera, then remember to send me best quality. Sometimes some email systems squash the pictures really small. Make sure they're not coming to me as small little 200 pixel wide images, because we can't really use those at all. And you don't have to send pictures. Actually, if you just want to send some thoughts about your photography, any projects that you're working on, any inspirational ideas that you have, then I would dearly love to hear from you as well. Send to studio@photographydaily.show. Right, I've walked to a part of the woods here. I met somebody a moment ago. This is a part of the woods where they do their wild swimming. I can see. They said they had a sauna down here. So you go into the sauna, then you take a dip, then you go into the sauna. Sounds amazing. On a day like this, it sounds amazing. But they do it all year round. What do you think, Barney? Should we have a go? Should we bring out our inner Wim Hof, shall we? Oh, it does look inviting today. It truly does. A letter from Alex Militsky in Siberia. Siberia, Neil. How did this mail get through? Are you supposed to be taking a letter from Siberia? Well, in the spirit of do what you can't, I think you'll find that there are many people in Russia who don't agree with something they're not allowed to call the W word. And if you'll bear with me, I'll read a follow-up letter to the one that I sent him back after this one. It's all follow-up letters this week, isn't it? Which comes complete with pictures that will be on the show page today. Yes, some fantastic pictures that'll be on the show page today. Hi, Neil. It's Alex from Siberia again. It's been a while since I last sent you a letter. Since then, I finally quit the job that I hated. And it's a sort of new start. Sort of, at the moment. So here's a little story I'd like to share. Lately, I've been curious about shooting 28mm lenses. And we talked about 28mm as a focal length last week, funnily enough, didn't we? But I couldn't afford any of the if you like, proper options, lenses or cameras. And then I thought, what if I get myself an old compact camera with a 28mm on the wide end? So I checked what people sell locally and settled on a Leica that I can actually afford, which is the Panasonic Lumix LX1 from 2005. Paid the equivalent of about $30 for it. I didn't expect to like it, but after a few days, I love it. It's small and light and shoots raw, dot raw to be precise. Has a nice Leica lens and a CCD sensor, and it kind of became my walk-around sketchbook camera, which I treat like a film one, since it can only fit 100 raw images onto its disc. or card, I suppose. It's got very slow write speeds and very limited ISO range, which I mostly keep at 80. I found the experience to be very freeing, shooting some things and nothings around town and not trying to make serious art. Since I started taking it with me, I haven't taken my proper camera out of the bag once. So now I'm curious what it can do in a portrait shoot. And I'm dangerously close to having a case of old compact camera gas. Is that an official illness? It probably is, isn't it? Old compact camera gas. I'm not sure I feel like sharing pictures from this LX1 just yet. Soon, maybe soon. So instead, here are some photos that I shot in Dagestan back in April. Best regards from Alexander Militsky. I'll pop those on the show page today, and they are fabulous pictures. Now, I was intrigued, by emails getting in and out of Russia. I don't know why or how I thought there would be some kind of, absolute brick wall to prevent this. And Alex is no supporter of the thing he is not allowed to call the W word. Email, said Alex, is to my knowledge unaffected in terms of blocking traffic, and so is the regular mail, though there seems to be more attention from customs. I can imagine there is. And deliveries are a little bit slower. Yes, I can imagine they are. Different story though when it comes to websites, Neil. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, blocked statewide, but people use a VPN to access them. Some VPN services are blocked, like Nord and Proton. But there's still plenty that work. It's not illegal, he says, to use Meta's products. Just don't do business where money is involved. Also, some news sites are blocked, such as your BBC and Deutsche Welle. Not the best time to live in a country, he says, and be against violence. And, well, you're not allowed to call it the W word, I know. Let's not get you in trouble. The pictures you sent, though, of Dagestan. Oh, another beautifully fascinating place to travel to, though. Even prior to the current geopolitics, it was a place considered completely off limits for the casual visitor. It looks like a breathtaking place. Look at those mountains and the passes. The pictures are on the show page today. They are incredible. They really are. What a beautiful place. And that picture of the lake I think it's carrying a message within it, that lake. You'll know what I mean if you go to it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you saw this, or maybe it's serendipity or luck. I don't know, but there's this love heart cloud reflecting in the lake wonderfully. Oh, such a peaceful image. They're on the show page today. Alex, what an interesting idea as well to find if you like, vintage digital. Officially speaking, things have to be over 10 years old to be vintage, don't they? Is it 20 years? How old do things have to be vintage? I was always told golden oldie records have to be 10 years plus. Right, to my guest. Now, if you've listened to the show for a while, you'll be familiar with a very special friend of the show, Hannah Gimblett, particularly if you're a member of our amazing, wonderful Facebook group. Hannah right now is in the middle of her first photographic show, which I'm delighted to see happen. It's a show that's in Exeter in the southwest of England at a place called Part Life Heavitree, which is it looks to me to be a very special community centre because they actively encourage artists and photographers to exhibit their work. But Hannah is unlike the artists who do get wall space. Her show is a botanical show. It's featuring flora that's been shot in her bedroom, a room that she can't leave right now. She'll not get to see this show that isn't far from her home because, like many more people in the world than you might expect or seems possible, she suffers a condition called myalgic encephalomyelitis, or ME. Despite the messages we've exchanged, despite the pictures that she's kindly shared with us over, I think pretty much since the start of the show, actually, in our group, I've never been able to have a one-to-one conversation because each day for Hannah brings about a challenge of just finding the strength to have a conversation outside those that she has with her family, and making pictures can equally be a challenge beyond what you might expect or consider an everyday possibility, or just something you and I do, and taking the opportunities to get out with our camera. Hannah is the spirit behind the title of today's show, really. And I will be sharing 4 of the pictures exhibited on the show page today, and they're really special. Here is my conversation with Hannah Gimblett.
So Hannah, tell me about, well, first of all, I want to try and get an understanding of ME, because it's such a misunderstood condition, isn't it?
It is, yes. Even still in this day and age where there's so many people who suffer with it, it still seems to be misunderstood even by the medical profession, which is difficult. I mean, I've had it for 15 years now, because I grew up with childhood arthritis. And then when I turned 13, something kind of changed. I had a couple of infections, and then that's when the ME started.
And how did it manifest? What sort of things did you notice?
I just noticed I was just completely wiped out. My pain increased, and I haven't been able to walk since then. So everything, there was just an accumulation of things in my body. It just kind of has really taken its toll.
So you've lived with this for quite some time now.
Yes, it has been a while.
And is there a prognosis? I would imagine you've spent your time talking to a lot of experts about this.
No, there isn't really for ME of any kind, but especially severe ME. It's so unknown as to what they can do. When they can do anything, really.
And even though 17 million people, I was reading, are affected by this worldwide, it's still just not understood or even recognised by so many.
No, not at all. I think with any severity of ME, people just think, oh, you just get a little bit tired. Yeah. And that's about it. And it's hard to explain to people unless they've had some experience with it.
I wonder now whether with long COVID, people are beginning to think, oh, this is what it's like.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of articles and reports of long COVID and ME, and the ME Association posting about it, how people's points of view are starting to change, and well, I hope that they're going to start to change. And especially with the other things that have formed out of the ME, with being bedbound and the contracture in my feet, that's also an unpredictable, unknown thing with the so-called experts. They're a bit baffled as to what to do at present.
I don't understand about it's contracture, isn't it?
Yeah, so basically the muscles in my ankles and feet, from what I can gather, they've kind of shortened and tightened, and they're kind of working against each other. So my feet are completely twisted inwards. And that's on top of I had an x-ray a little while ago, and it showed deformities in my feet from having childhood arthritis and it taking so long for them to diagnose it and have any treatment.
So the arthritis and the ME together have conspired to make this more of an issue, would be?
Yeah, most definitely. It's very painful, and it's been so I've been completely bedbound for 3 years now, and it's been about 2.5 years that my feet started forming this issue, which has made it more difficult.
Is there a day-to-day plan, Hannah? I know when we were speaking, it was quite. I had a sleepless night because of the heat. You had a sleepless night because of other matters. But you do wake quite early, and I wonder whether there is any form of pattern to your day, if it's possible at all.
It's not really. It's kind of all over the place. My day is kind of predicted by pain and fatigue, and I kind of work around my medication and such, and trying to manage the pain in that sense.
Well, in the middle of this comes your photography.
Yeah.
Would I be being too melodramatic to describe it as a lifeline?
No, that's not melodramatic at all. It's always been there, even before the ME, when I was a kid and I got my first little film camera.
What was your first one?
It was a Barbie film camera. When I was 6, I turned 6, and my mum got it for my birthday.
Fantastic.
And since then, it's kind of always been there.
Tell me you still got that camera, or somewhere
I have,
on a shelf,
somewhere.
So it starts with that, And then I know you moved into one of the other passions of your life is music, and you started photographing musicians, didn't you?
Yes, well, prior to becoming bedbound, I started a local music magazine. So I noticed there wasn't one for the area in Exeter. So I developed that, and alongside photographing bands, I would write reviews and such. That was really a lot of fun. I kind of dived in head first. I had never done a photo shoot or anything before. So my first one was for the magazine, and I was having a bit of a nervous breakdown beforehand.
But I think that's the whole point of this. I mean, this theme this week is do what you can't. And sometimes throwing yourself into something when somebody said, well, you can't do that. Oh, best not do that. Don't try that. Oh, no, that's never going to work. And you proved it with the music thing that, yeah, it's a bit nerve-wracking before you do that shoot. But then you do it and you think, I can do this, actually. I can.
Yes, and I guess that has continued even though I'm not able to photograph musicians and such at the moment. It's kind of continued with my botanical work, and my love for that is really grown. Because when I was approached about the exhibition, you always doubt yourself, don't you? There's that imposter syndrome that you've spoken about on the show, and whether you can do it or not, whether your photography is up to scratch. But thankfully I seem to have pulled it off in some way.
Well, let's talk about that project then, because this is are we calling it the Botanical Project?
Well, I've called it because it's involving local flower growers, capturing the beauty of our county's flowers, because it's all Devon-grown flowers that are included in the project.
So the exhibition is on. To make the pictures for the exhibition, these have all had to have been photographed from your room. So tell me about that process.
Yes, well, obviously photographing it from bed has proven to be quite difficult because you have to have a certain setup, but I used a ring light to the side of either the bouquet or the singular flower.
Yeah.
And thanks to my mum kind of holding each flower and persevering with that, and sometimes juggling, holding the background and the light and the
So mum's become stylist, really, with you.
Yeah. She's definitely my creative director as well. Yeah, so that was difficult because I've never done such a dedicated project from my room or even from bed, so that was a difficult thing to tackle at first. But I think with a project like that, once you know what you're aiming for, like the first kind of little bit of the project, the first tulips that arrived, there were these beautiful double purple tulips, and it was still a bit unknown as to which direction the project would take. But after that, it kind of flowed more.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because I think sometimes when you start something, I know this with a podcast actually, Hannah. You think, right, I think I've got an idea, and then before you know it, serendipity arrives and says, oh, we'll take you this direction. Yes,
it took a direction that I didn't expect, because I've never really photographed flowers in this way before, with a dramatic black background and the lighting and such. But yeah, my love for photography is growing through the project.
And it is now an exhibition. It's in Exeter, so I appreciate that with over half our audience being overseas, then not everybody's going to be able to get to see it, or are they?
Well, there's some videos online or photos and such, but I think it would be great because I'm not able to see it in person. I might contact the exhibition to have kind of like a walkthrough so people can see it as well as myself. So it's more of a virtual tour. I think that would be really good.
From what I saw, the pictures that were being produced, it did look amazing, and it had that wonderful sort of soft edge to it, didn't it?
Yes, with the flowers in the background, and I think it just created a lot of drama as well, and made the flowers the kind of star of the show.
Well, I'm hoping this is just the start of more botanical projects then, because it seems to me that you found a new passion to take your photography a certain direction.
Yeah, I really have. It's been such a great project to work on, and because I photographed this mainly at the start of spring, I'd really like to have a continuation where I have the next season of flowers that are coming into bloom. There's different ones that I haven't been able to photograph. Dahlias are now coming into bloom, and sunflowers soon, and they're some of my favourites, and it would be amazing to capture them in the same vein and to continue with the project, hopefully for another exhibition in the future.
I think language is really important. One thing I notice whenever we talk, and that has been, of course, Messenger until this moment, you're always the next. You always say the next, which is important, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I think for everybody, it's so important to have some type of positive focus. I think especially when you're struggling with health issues, you're kind of in the same room day to day. It's important to have that little thing to look forward to. Whatever your passion may be, I just think it's essential really day to day.
That's Hannah Gimblitz, and my thanks to you, Hannah, for finding some time and some strength to talk to me for the show this week. And as I say, you'll find some pictures and links on the show page today. And I want to add that I appealed for help to put the exhibition on. Well, not so much put the exhibition on, but do the printing, the pictures that Hannah needed for the wall, obviously, for the exhibition. And Hannah really wanted to use a particular art paper for which we really needed a special printer. And I don't mean just hardware, I mean somebody skilled in making archival prints on a paper like this. And that person came forward from within our community, so I was really proud of that. So thank you, Mike Crawford, who runs Lighthouse Darkroom, who is a specialist printer and photographer. Mike's printed for clients who have exhibited at the National Portrait Gallery and the Photographers Gallery in London and Paris Photo, and well, the list goes on. And I'll leave a link for him too at the top of the show page. And the prints, Mike, they are certainly of a level we couldn't have done. So thank you for your time that you spent with Hannah as well, making the test prints and the conversations that you had, and the final exhibition prints, which were on Hannah Mulay Museum etching. I hope I've got that right. But that is what makes this community so special, and this podcast such a pleasant surprise often. It really is to present. Now, Mike is one of our patrons as well now, and in the winter I'm hoping to visit Lighthouse Darkroom and we'll have a chat about some of the special clients that he prints for. And on that note, thank you to our wonderful, special, incredible patrons who support this show for the price of a cup of high street coffee or a roll of my favourite. Is it HP5, Neil? Yes. How did you guess? HP5 black and white film a month. And if you're not fond of monthly, as I say, you can now join us annually, which has been proving very successful. So to say thank you, I make an additional short diary of a photographer-styled show each week. It's called More, which you can only hear on the Patreon webpage, or the wonderful app, which is like another podcast player, really. Only this one, you can look at pictures whenever I discuss pictures. I've popped up some street portraits that I made recently as well. And also there's a show called Replay, a chance to hear the special guests that we have on our show, unplugged, as it were. And there's more, Neil. Yes, there's more. We meet on Zoom once a month. We share stories and pictures, which you will find on the website on the picture post tab. Actually, got to put this month's up. Note to self. We are coming to our 100th more episode, actually. We're at 99 tomorrow. 99! Yes, I can't believe it. Last week, I had two particular stories that would definitely appear in a Shouldn't Happen to a Photographer book, if ever I were to write one. And enough people found amusement in so reading it. This week, there's a story written from room 306 in Ipswich Town's Purple Palace Hotel. And a Lightroom feature that isn't universally known, but has, and I'm going to sound exceptionally dramatic now, has literally changed my creative life. I agree, I do need to get out more. And other stories. But I mentioned Mike Crawford a moment ago, and I called him up during the week to thank him for the work he'd so graciously done for Hannah. And I caught him as he was prepping the chemicals for a particular photographer that we champion and we love, and we've featured again only recently actually. He's printing archive stuff for, you'll never guess, none other than Charlie Phillips. Let me read a few words from a Guardian feature in case you're new around these parts and need a little prompt on the importance of this photographer. And I'll link to the feature actually on the show page so you can read it for yourself. Charlie Phillips, it says, why did it take so long for one of Britain's greatest photographers to get his due? His photographs of Muhammad Ali, Jimi Hendrix, sold around the world. Cartier-Bresson was a fan, while Fellini liked him so much he put him in a film. Yet in the UK, Charlie Phillips' work was ignored for decades. Well, let's play a few moments then from Charlie Phillips, from episode 227, where Charlie describes how he ended up in Europe as a young photographer. And I just love this story, how he goes from city to city. Charlie sort of just moves with it. Sometimes you have to move with the story. You don't know where you're going to end up or where the story is heading next, and this is one of those. It's what I call real wide-eyed thinking. It's a couple of minutes long, but I love to just listen to Charlie tell his stories, I really do. And Mike, I'd love to see those prints of Portobello Road in the 60s that you're printing for him right now, coming alive in those trays. Here's Charlie Phillips.
In about 1968, there was a big student uprising in Europe, and there was another uprising in Paris, so I thought I'd go to Paris for a day or two to take some photographs of the student uprising in Paris, Action Directe, that's what they used to call Action Directe. I went over to Paris, hanging around with students and living in communes. What happened, I always remember outside the Gare du Nord, I saw the police kicked out of the student and blood was everywhere, and I just panicked and I just hopped and left, not even packed my bags properly. But I just thought I'd get out of Paris. Anyway, I was traveling with a rucksack and I hitchhiked out of Paris and spent a few weeks down in Marseille, Jean Lapin. I didn't take much photograph, but I ended up in hitchhike. I didn't even know where I was going, so I ended up in Rome.
As you do.
June La Dolce Vita, So I was staying in a youth hostel.
But this is where you started to hang out with the paparazzi.
This is 1968. They were just finished making the film Cleopatra. And I was outside Piazza di Spagna one morning and I saw all these people running off. I think it was Elizabeth Taylor or Marcella Mastroianni. So I didn't know what was happening. I didn't even know what a paparazzi was. So I joined in and started taking photographs.
Just with the camera that you had with you. That wasn't the same one as you'd had all those years, though, was it?
I went up market and got a Petri for £35. Because I used to take a lot of photographs of parties and they'd give me 5 shillings. I don't know, I just ended up, didn't have enough money to come back to England. I didn't have no one to turn, so I ended up in Rome in a commune. People took sympathy on me. Part of the student uprising as well. They were hanging around it, but in the same time, to sort of survive, I used to hang around Piazza di Spagna, Via Condotti, and there used to be a famous cafe called Cafe El Greco, and you just hang around there. You'd see some celebrity passing by. So in those days, you'd see people like Peter O'Toole and John Philip Law, Rod Steiger, just to be in this area, to be seen. Because it's us paparazzi who's built the career of lots of actors and actresses. But now we get abused. It's not the same. Years ago, they used to love you, take you up, they tell you, go away, you care.
Wonderful to hear Charlie Phillips telling his stories. I know you're not supposed to. Oh, Barney, come on. What's he grabbed? It's a sock. Come away. Come on. Good boy. What do you want a sock for? We're in the woods. There's so many sticks. There's sticks of the day, aplenty here. And you've chosen a sock. A branded one, I'll give you that, but it's a sock. Charlie Phillips. Start again, shall I, Barney? Charlie Phillips. Wonderful to hear Charlie's stories. And I know you're not supposed to have favourites, as I say, but one of the highlights over the last year or so is sitting with Charlie in his allotment, listening to him tell stories about his photography. It really was. He invited me to go back he was doing a very special lamb dish for some friends that night, and I couldn't go. I wish I had, though. I would imagine the table with the stories that he had to share would have been marvellous. I could have recorded just that meal alone, couldn't I? Note to self: have a chat with Charlie, see when he's next cooking his special lamb dish. How's the 365 doing this week then? I don't know, Neil, you tell me. Well, some superb images coming in. for our feature, which is all designed around a community photographing and providing stories for a 365 feature. Because I know that, and I've tried them myself, and I've only once managed to get, I don't know, did I go all the way with my first 365? I think I might have done, actually. But 365s, I know for some people, is quite a stressy thing, because you have to make sure you upload a picture every single day. What am I going to do? Oh, it's 11:59 at night and I haven't done today's 365. Quick, get out there, shoot a frame. But the Community 365 is all about giving you the opportunity to take part in a 365 feature without having to make a picture every day. You're part of a community making your photographic stories, and occasionally we feature your one. See? A de-stressed way of doing a 365. And this week, Bill Darby's amazing sunset. We've had Darren Herbst study of petals, Lynn Fraser's superb picture of a puffin ruffling feathers. They are the cutest birds in the world, aren't they, puffins? Actually, on that note, I think, Lynn, did I dream this, or did you say, if I come back as a bird, I want to come back as a puffin? I'm sure you said that. Or it was a bizarre dream I had. Dennis Skyham's diagonal line steps picture with all the lovely contrast. Fantastic, we had that this week. Just super. Andrew Hardacre's fabulous black and white of the welder. And Ian Stronghill's frosty leaves picture. But I'm going to highlight Tuesday's photograph that we featured by John Dorset. It's a cabin in the woods picture. Now, a couple of weeks ago, you'll remember, I found a cabin in the woods on our Photowalk, which was a tad odd, given that there was nothing around it for miles and miles. And you know what my imagination is like. Neil, yes, it's a little bit far-fetched at times. Well, mine, when I found it, I mean, it was the cabin from The Evil Dead. It really was. Part 1 and 2. Neil, you've not watched both of you. John found one. Anyway, John Dorset found one. And the cabin that he photographed had a punch bag on the veranda, a shovel, and a coffin-shaped wooden box. John, get out of that place now. But send your 365s. I'd love to see where you're photographing in the world. It really is. You're going to say it, aren't you, Neil? Yes, my geographic blog. It really is. Send them to studio@photographydaily.show. studio@photographydaily.show. 2,000 pixels wide, please. Or if you're shooting on a smartphone, best quality. And that'll be fantastic. We've only got, how many have we got now? 52 postings left to complete our 365. I was considering perhaps going to the end of the year. I'm not sure. It might be replaced with another idea I've got about portraits. Watch this space. Right, letters. Let's take one from Russell Shakespeare. I'm pretty confident, Russell. We've not read one from you yet. Yes, you did, Neil, just a couple of months ago. Thanks very much for remembering. No, I'm sure we haven't. Hi, Neil. I thought I'd get in touch. Firstly, to say how much I enjoy your Photography Daily podcast. I'm a working photographer and have been for the last 30 years. Photography is my job, but I can honestly say it's also my passion. You're very lucky, aren't you, when you can do something that's a job and a passion all rolled into one. Now, Russell has answered some questions that I put onto the contact page. If you've ever thought you'd like to write into the show, but you've wondered what to write about, you've had that, I'd like to write in. I'd like to tell Neil and everybody else what's going on in my photographic life, but you think, where do I start? Then on the contact page, you will find some questions, some conversation starters, if you will. Why you shoot what you do? ? That was one of the questions that he answered. Well, in my working life, says Russell, I do a mixture of editorial portraiture and documentary work. Russell, you've just described, I think, my perfect job. What kit you use and why? My kit, he says, is pretty minimal. The bulk of it is with the Leica M series cameras. 3 lenses, a 28, back on the 28, a 35 and a 50. Now, that's pretty much the setup that I have with my X100V with the wide conversion lens, because it's a fixed focal length. So talking in traditional full frame language, I get in trouble sometimes for saying that, then I have, with the wide conversion lens, the equivalent of a 28mm. When that conversion lens is off, the fixed focal length is equivalent of a 35mm, and then with the teleconverter on, 50mm. And I find all those 3 focal lengths absolutely perfect now for my work. So I can understand how you do as well, particularly when you're making editorial, portraiture and documentary work. Now, I should actually tell you at this point as well that Russell is one of Australia's Leica ambassadors. And if you go to his website, which I will link to, you'll see this absolute treasure trove of work. How making pictures has changed your life? ? That's another question on the contact page. Making pictures, says Russell, still continues to change my life, and often on a daily basis. Doing commissioned assignments takes you into a lot of people's lives on a regular basis, and I always come out of the shoot having learned something new. I'd be fascinated to hear some of these stories, Russell. I really would. Can you share some? Go on, please. And a story about you, ... Well, says Russell, having worked in editorial and magazines for the last 30 years, I've always done my own personal work, which I really believe has kept the fire going strong inside. We hear this, don't we, all the time, about personal work, about doing projects. One of my projects has been documenting the city of Varanasi in India. I started this in 1987 at the age of 24. 34 years later, I am still going back. Oh, look at Barnes. What are you doing? Sorry, Russell. He's got a cone. He loves playing with cones. Go on, chase it. You get it. There we go. Naughty cone. You tell it off. Yes. In fact, says Russell, I would have gone back for the Holi Festival, which I first documented in 2008. But the pandemic that we've all gone through rather stop that. I'm planning 2023 now. Actually, you might be saying, but Neil, what is a Holi Festival? While we're about it, so let's ask our PD voice AI, shall we? Hey Iris, what is the Holi Festival?
Holi is a Hindu festival that has been celebrated since ancient times. The Holi festival is celebrated as a way to welcome in spring, and also is seen as a new beginning where people can release all their inhibitions and start fresh.
Thank you. Except, sorry for being a bit picky, but I think you'll find it's pronounced Holly, as in happy holly.
You say tomato, I say tomato.
Yeah. Anyway, says Russell, moody, I've included a series of pictures taken at the last 2 Holi festivals. I know it's a very colourful festival, but I prefer to photograph in black and white. I find the colour too seductive and prefer to focus on the emotion of the moment. Isn't that a good, it's an interesting turn of phrase. I find the colour too seductive. People often say you find the colour confusing or distracting, too seductive. Oh, I like that. I'm going to borrow that. You'll hear me using that, Russell, in the future, no doubt. I think I need to, as you've heard some music sort of coming in here, I think I need to set the scene for his pictures. Holi is this ancient tradition that, as Iris says, marks the end of winter and honours the triumph of good over evil. Celebrants light bonfires and they throw colourful powder, which is called, I looked this up obviously, called galal. They eat sweets and they dance to music, and there's a man covered in the bright colours of Holi. He showers the crowd with red powder during the festivals, although there's lots of different powders actually, aren't there? They all mean different things. Oh, I should have looked that up. All the different colours mean different things. Fascinating, isn't it? Amazing. I mean, you can feel yourself being drawn in by this music and people throwing this coloured powder, people absolutely covered in it. But you have to see these photographs. They are just sublime. And sure, at first I was thinking, but this is the Holi Festival. It needs colour. That's the point of all the colourful powders that are being thrown. But actually, they completely live these pictures. They completely live and own the black and white medium. I mean, I suppose there's a little bit of the Mexican Dia de los Muertos? Neil, you're making a hash of this. The Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead. I should have just said that. But there is a little bit of that in there, particularly in the picture with the skulls. That was, ooh, look at that. But they definitely have a bite about them. It's a step ladder into the picture, I suppose, when you're talking about contrast. It really is. It's a strong set, and they're on the show page today. And if this music inspires you to make the pilgrimage, if only in your mind alongside the pictures that you see, well, I say, reserve me a spot in your suitcase, please. And thank you so much, Russell, for sending them in. Right, wipe that coloured powder from your listening device. I'd love to go to Holi, I really would. It looks fantastic. Actually, India is definitely one of those. It's on the list of must-go-to places to photograph. There's just everything about it. There's the Holi festival, obviously, the culture. Preaching to the choir, probably there, aren't I? I think I probably am. Quick letter from Helen Fennell. I was thinking about Photography Daily this morning, she says, while I listened on the train. I'm guessing this is your radio experience, but it does feel like I'm listening to live radio, which I've always loved. I'm not sure why, but radio feels like it's broadcasting direct to me. See, this goes back to the one-to-one thing we were talking about and linking me to all the other people who might be listening. I don't get that feeling from television. It is a very special medium. It truly is. That's why I loved it. I got the opportunity to work in television, and television was always perceived to be this sort of the bright lights part of the organisation. You know, the glamorous bit. But honestly, I loved and still love radio so much. It is a special medium, and there's something I can't tell, particularly the nighttime shows. The graveyard shift, as it used to be called, but there is something really quite special about being in a darkened studio with one lamp. You have to. I always did anyway. You have to sort of set the scene, get that feeling going. Sort of one desk lamp, and just the lights from the record players. The record players, Neil. The record players. Yeah, in those days, the record players or the CD players. The CD players, Neil. CD records. What century were you born in? But there was always something very special about that one-to-one medium. Oh no, Barney, no. Oh, he's just rolled himself in. Oh, you can probably guess. We're just about to get back in car soon. I heard that. Car, we're bringing something back that's a bit more smelly than when it departed a couple of hours ago. I get a feeling, says Helen, of connection when I hear you read out letters, imagining all the other PD listeners on their photo walks around the world. And it's really comforting to me. There are people out there who, like me, just want to take photos. I know it isn't live, but it feels like it. Well, it could be. Sending all my best wishes from Helen Fennell. P.S. One of my life's biggest regrets is that I never got to go to a Radio 1 roadshow. I was never allowed to go. My parents were having none of it. That, Helen, the roadshow, that is a whole other conversation. If you don't live in the UK, you'll be wondering what Helen's talking about. It was this summer show that toured with the big pop station, Radio 1. And it had acts on it on stage. Bands would come and perform. And you get, 10, 12. Some of these huge road shows, I remember, from places like Blackpool, I think had as many as 15,000 people watching on the sands. Oh, it was fantastic. It was quite the show. And I remember there was a joker, the roadshow manager, who if you were the young new one, the upstart, i.e. me in those days, you used to get given challenges. I remember being pushed in the sea as a joke from a Sea King helicopter and almost arrested driving a BBC Range Rover that was reported by this manager as stolen when they knew it wasn't. I got stopped on a motorway, all part of a practical joke, and then being given the fright of my life in a display team helicopter. There's lots of stories there. I'll pick one of those out, actually, and tell it in the More episode tomorrow. There we go. Note to self. One more little story and we'll try and make it a photographic one because there are some that are loosely connected to photography in there. Right, let me welcome my second guest on the show. And if Do What You Can't is a theme, he also fits very well into this brief. It cannot be easy being a street photographer if you have anxiety. You can't do that. You'll never make it to the end of the day. You'll be a bag of nerves. Right. Well, this is Chris Harrison's life. For years he hasn't been able to work due to his anxiety, but he is able to make portraits of complete strangers. Actually, he's looking to make 1,000 of them in a year. 1,000? Are you sure? Yes, I am. You can't do that. Well, maybe you can. This is Chris Harrison.
Chris, your story starts in 2005. You had a Canon Ixus. I had a Canon Ixus. The one I chose to use was I managed to use it on a safari. At around about
a little bit different to what I was doing, but yes,
it's the worst camera in the world for a safari. But it's not a bad camera when it comes to photographing people.
It was my first digital, yeah. I mean, honestly, I'd never even seen a digital camera. You've obviously heard the story, but very briefly, I was at a Christmas party. There was lots of people gathered around one of my colleagues looking at something. I went over. I was like, "Oh, what are you looking at?" And he was like, "Oh, I've just taken some pictures." And I'm like, "Oh my God, that's amazing!" I'd literally never seen a digital camera.
You've never seen pictures on the back of a digital camera in your life?
Exactly.
Right. Because I think you thought of photography as quite a faff, didn't you? I mean, I'm quoting you now.
I always liked pictures. I always liked photography, but I thought all this developing and buying film, and I think I'm inherently a lazy person, so I just thought I can't be bothered with it. There's plenty of other great photographers out there that I could look at. So I got this Canon, I bought it off him, I started using it, I was photographing everything and anything, didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. Very quickly I thought, I'm really into this, still not really knowing what I was doing. In 2006, I became a taxi driver, and I came across a French guy from Paris called Eric Tenin, who was doing a thing called Paris Daily Photo.
Right.
There was an article on it in Amateur Photographer magazine, and I read this and I thought, what a brilliant idea. And at that time, there was about 7 or 8 people around the world doing this daily photo thing. So I thought, I live in Newcastle upon Tyne, so I thought, I'll do a Newcastle daily photo.
So that's essentially the concept of a 365, yeah?
Yes, basically, just different photo of Newcastle, people, places, things, literally anything.
Yeah.
I had a blog on WordPress. I started off, it became ridiculously successful. And at one point, I think there was about 240 people around the world doing these daily photos in their town. Eric is sort of always the godfather of this thing. That was a real lesson to me in photography. And I suppose at that time I was doing street photography without even realising I was doing it. So 2016, end of 2016, I was bored. I thought, actually, I'm going to go into town and take pictures of people, like candidates, I think. And I loved it so much. That was the turning point for street photography, early 2017.
Is that when you became aware of photographers like Gary Winogrand? Because I know he's a big driving force in your
huge,
work, isn't
absolutely
it?
huge.
What is it about Gary's work that particularly draws?
I don't know if I subconsciously copied him, but I look back, I just don't know. I just think his style, he's there, and I like the way he shoots this whole kind of pretending he doesn't know what he's doing with the camera, and I love that. And I do that a lot myself. I've completely taken that off him. Well, I mean, how he does it, I don't know, because obviously I use this back screen all the time.
Yeah.
But of course, he was using the eyepiece.
Now, this is a good time then to bring in and mention the 1,000 portraits project, because that's taken you a step in a slightly different direction, because you've always been very candid, and now you're moving into a genre where you have to be where you're certainly identifying who you would like to photograph, and you're requesting a photograph from them.
It's really bizarre how going out and taking candids all day I can do without even thinking. It's second nature now. But actually to go up to somebody and ask for a portrait, it was so nerve-wracking when I started doing it. And I really wanted to push myself and get back. So I did a few portraits last year, every so often. Usually if somebody had a dog with them or a skateboard, there had to be some kind of prop so I could use that as the excuse. So that worked. So I got a few portraits last year that I really liked. A couple of environmental ones, people working at stalls in markets and stuff like that. And then I thought, just at the end of last year, I thought, you know what? I think I'm going to do a project, something to keep me busy, 1,000 projects, which I thought was an insane amount. But I thought, no, we'll do it. And I worked it out. It's 84 a month, 2.7 a day. So I thought, yeah, I'll give this a go. It'll increase my confidence talking to people on the street.
So we've been talking about approaches, and I've been thinking, perhaps overthinking, to be honest, Chris, about this subject. Being middle-aged with a grey beard, that's me I'm talking about, not you. Although I think we share a few things there.
Yes, definitely. Especially our fine head of hair.
How do you fare? Is there anything learned that you found through asking for a portrait on the street that you can share? Or is it really just the confidence of doing it?
I think it's just a really simple thing, and I'm sure everybody listening and everybody who does it does exactly the same thing. Make sure you're smiling. Look, I mean, I'm a big guy, tattoos, covered in tattoos, beard, bald head. Especially if you're approaching women on their own, it can be a bit daunting. But I think because I'm doing it in the city centre for the most part, there's always plenty of people around. So hopefully I don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable, whatever happens. So it's just a case of going up to them. I'm smiling. I'm a street photographer. I'm doing a project where I've decided to take 1,000 portraits over a year. I love your jacket. I love your hair. Your earrings are amazing. Whatever it is it okay if I take a portrait of you? Very often people will ask, oh, what's it for? So I get my phone out, I show them my website. And they always say, I always read this statistic that street photographers who do portraits say that 1 out of 10 people will say no. I'm at about 560, 570 portraits now. And I think I've had about 12 no's. So I think that's a remarkable comeback. The hardest thing is doing it in Newcastle City Centre, because especially when I do it on a Saturday, because there's always so many people in the background. And it's difficult to get perfect portraits, I think. I've already had some criticism of the idea on the YouTube video that went up. People said, oh, it's a silly idea, it's a silly idea.
Why is it a silly idea? And I'm trying to get
because they just said you're not going to get 1,000 great portraits. I know I'm not going to get 1,000.
But you didn't label it 1,000 great portraits. You labelled it 1,000 portraits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the comment was a bit strange because he said, why don't you just do 10 great portraits? Well, I don't get the point of that. That means I get to meet 10 people. Yeah. Whereas doing this, I'm getting to meet 1,000 people.
Yeah. And what about the nerves now? Do you feel the nerves anymore, or?
A tiny bit. Depends who it is. I think it depends generally what mood. We all wake up in different moods and have different things going on in our lives. I need to spend a bit more time getting to know people. Funny enough, I was watching an Eric Kim video this morning, and he does that excellent thing where he does all the asking, gets permission, and then says, oh, what are you doing today? Are you going shopping? Are you meeting friends? Yeah. And he's shooting as he's asking the questions. I need to get into that and get more natural portraits.
But you do ask for people's names, don't you?
I always ask the name, always shake their hand or fist bump or whatever people are comfortable with. There's got to be a bit of interaction. I don't see much point in doing it if you're not going to have a little bit of interaction at the very least.
Is there anything liberating in making these kind of photographs? Something that the sort of the more candid nature of photography didn't give you?
Yeah, I think so. I generally like people. I like being around people. Or weirdly, there's another side to that with my anxiety and not being around people. But this is different. I don't know. I can't really explain why the difference is. Actually, talking to you now is making me feel like I really need to be talking more to people when I'm doing these portraits. I'm going to try and step that up tomorrow. I'm going in town tomorrow, so I'll try and step that up tomorrow.
There's something on your website, Chris, that really piqued my interest, and something I've seen just a handful of photographers, not many do, and it's inspired me, actually. There's a section where you show pictures of your friends, because in all this enthusiasm to photograph strangers, our own history and that of our friends is just as important, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Taking friends is a little bit easier, obviously, because they're there with you all the time. And I mean, literally nobody sees me without a camera around my neck. You know, I often joke that I go to bed with a camera on my bedside table. And I mean, it's been years since anybody's seen me without a camera. Everywhere I go without fail, I have a camera with me. Yeah. Go to the corner shop, take the camera. Yeah. Not quite answering the door with a camera around my neck, but that'll be the last one I'll do. It started the usual thing, going to parties, events, people's engagement parties, whatever it was, took a camera, took photographs. And then I realised that I love these photographs. These are my friends. These are people I spend time with. These are the people I know the best. Yeah. So I made a section for that on the website to put that up. And everybody's cool with it, and they get to see the photographs whenever they want as well. Obviously, they've got them because I usually send them out.
Now, you mentioned the anxiety. What has changed in you, maybe in the way that you, not just in the way that you see, but the way that you deal with your anxiety?
The anxiety is a strange thing. It kind of started about 5 years ago. Right. I have no idea where it came from. I worked in call centres for a few years, and I would say quite happily that I hated absolutely every second of those 11 years. It was horrendous. Hated it. And I think that's where it came from. It caused that to start happening. But the way it's resolved itself with my anxiety is I get really nervous in groups of people that I know, which is very strange. So, for example, I'm hopefully going to a party on Saturday. I'll probably have a panic attack Saturday afternoon, not go. That quite often happens. And it's ludicrous. Anybody that suffers with anxiety, we all know how stupid it is, because we all suffer with it, whether it's a first job interview, a dentist trip, whatever it is, we all suffer with anxiety or nervousness. And 100 times out of 100, it's never as bad as we expect it, no matter what it is. So the anxiety thing is ridiculous. I find it so stupid, and it's really frustrating, and it's really hard to deal with. The going out and doing street photography and talking to people one-on-one isn't an issue. Yes, surrounded by people, but I don't know any of these people. So it's not as difficult to deal with. Newcastle's actually quite a small city. Right. So I do quite often see people that I've shot before, and you get a hello or a, oh, I remember you, yeah. So that's good, but it's still surrounded by people I generally don't know. And I find that a lot easier. But then other things like going to a gig, for example. I haven't done a gig for 5 years, and music's my other passion. Yeah. And that's really hard to deal with because, favourite bands come into town and I can't even go and see them. And again, it's a weird one because I don't know any of the people in the crowd either, or very few. But I can't deal with that. I don't know. I've had CBT therapy. I've had all sorts of things, but nothing seems to be helping it.
So does photography help you at all in those situations with your anxiety? When you've got that, as you say, you're always with camera round neck.
I think so. Weirdly, not so much with my friends. I don't know if it's some kind of imposter syndrome. I don't know that. Really? Not to do with talent, but just to do with your friends not really wanting you there. I don't know what it is. Yeah. I mean, I haven't worked for 4 years, so maybe somewhere in the back of my head I feel that I'm a bit of a loser compared to everybody else. The friends that I see the most of are my photography friends, and, through that.
Well, you're certainly not a loser looking at your pictures and your skill that you have. I'm interested in the documentarian Chris Harrison, because that's what you are. What's normal in the everyday today is tomorrow's glimpse into past history. It's something we often talk about. These are quite important photographs, really, aren't they?
I'd like to think so. I always say to people, maybe they're not massively important today. But in 30, 40, 50 years' time, I'm hoping people see these photographs and go, wow, look what people were wearing, look what Newcastle looked like then, and other places that I travelled to. I'd love somebody put a photograph up in the Hull past present. This really glamorously dressed woman, would be about the 1950s, I think the photograph was taken. And somebody realised it was their grandmother.
Oh, wow.
And I just thought, that must be just the best thing in the world to see that photograph, recognise her. And that's why when you see people complaining about street photographers, I sometimes do wonder, what is it you're actually bothered about by having your photograph taken? I know people worry about the internet, blah, blah, blah. I understand that. But I'd love to sit down with somebody who would be so offended by having their photograph taken. I mean, it's never happened to me. I've not had that yet. But at some point, somebody's going to be really offended by it. And they will ask me, and I will tell them why I've taken it, and I'll explain what I do and why I do it. I'm just fascinated why people are so upset about it.
I think that's the unanswerable question for many people, Chris. What happens when you get to the 1,000, by the way? You said you're at the 570 something, I think you said.
About 570, so I am ahead of schedule.
So what happens when we get to 1,000? Do we just say, do you know what? I'll just do 1,001, then 2, then 3, then 4.
I think there's every chance that will happen, yes. I'm expecting to finish it about maybe October, November time.
Wow.
Because we have various events coming up. Newcastle City Centre tends to be streets are cut off and pedestrianised, and there's fake grass put down, and there's events in the city centre. So there's all that to come. There'll be plenty of opportunity for portraits there. Newcastle's Pride event is always in July. So I've got that to come, which again is always a fantastic event. There's always great people there, obviously. So there'll be some fantastic portraits there. I mean, that day alone, the big event at the Town Moor, which is a huge grass area in Newcastle, and there'll be thousands of people there. I'm kind of saying to myself, I'm setting my target of 100 at least on that day. Yeah, it's going to be a lot. This whole 1,000 Portraits project is great over the year in that respect, but a friend of mine called Anthony Dorman, who unfortunately I don't think he does photography anymore, but he used to be absolutely brilliant, and he decided for comic relief years ago to do 1,000 portraits in a day.
A day?
It nearly killed him. I think he finished on about 750.
That is speed photography, isn't it? I mean, you're literally running from one to the next, to the next, to the next.
And it's funny because you can look at the quality of the pictures as the day went on and the more tired he got. But he raised money and it was a remarkable thing to do. It was phenomenal. So, yeah, so we've got all these events coming up. So I'm expecting to finish it by the end.
Yeah.
I've always said the 1,000th will be a self-portrait.
Yeah.
And then I would imagine I'll just carry on from there.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
I want to test something, by the way. I'm not sure because I can't see on the camera at the moment whether you're wearing your camera.
Actually, no, I'm not.
Chris, I was thinking
they're all here.
Oh,
all
but
the cameras are here.
do you know it still counts because I reckon if you reach out your hand, you've grabbed a camera straight away.
You've made me want to put it. Why wasn't I wearing it? I missed a trick there, didn't I? There you go. Not that anybody will see it, but you know.
That's Chris Harrison, and I'll of course have some links for you on the show page and share some of his work. Right, the heat's really beginning to burn through some thin cloud cover that we had at the start of the day, so I think it's time for us to head back. What do you think, Barn? That tongue hanging out suggests it is. We've run out of water nearly as well. Let's quit while the going's good, shall we? Pups, shall we? Oh, one more stick. Come on. This way. There we go. Good boy. For links to Chris and Hannah and the other photographers that you've heard from or about today, the Instagrams and the websites that we've mentioned, do go to today's show page on photographydaily.show, or you can follow the link in the podcast player app that will also take you there. The play out song in a moment. We always end with a song just to make some final few pictures with, or two, something to accompany those final frames from our walk together. But I'd like to leave you with a postscript first. And since we're talking about doing what you can't, not accepting folk around you telling you what you can and can't do, I'm going to lean on the words of the YouTuber that we started with and go a bit full circle on this one. Casey Neistat, who, do you know, one of the things I love about Casey, I've always liked about what he does and who he is that he's got lots of integrity, and if he can't do something, he says, I've got no idea what I'm doing here. But you sort of fall in love with his character as you see him working out a way to do it, that sort of can-do attitude. And I'm going to leave you with a quote from one of his films where he talks about exactly that. He says, more often than not, I find myself in situations where I've got no idea of what I'm doing, but I feel no shame in revealing that. And I love that. I love that integrity. Let's play out then with Katrina Stone.
Will it all be okay? I don't know. I don't know. When it all turns to grey, will you stay or will you go? I don't trust many people and let them get this close. Will it all be okay? I hope so. I hope so. 'Cause we've all seen better days, fought this war a million ways. Can we skip the part where I fall apart? I hope so. I hope so. What I feel and what I know, can't agree on anything, but it hurts to let go. Can you see I'm trying? All I want is to live where everyone said no. Will it all be all seen better days. Fought this war a million ways. Can we skip the part where I fall apart? I hope so. I hope so. Can I say I'm not fine without that look in your eyes? Can you love past the point where others chose to stop? 'Cause we've all seen better days. Fought this war a million ways. Can we skip the part where I fall apart and my tears come down like falling stars? Will it ever not be this damn hard? I hope so. I hope so.
And that's Katrina Stone. Fantastic. And we're done for another week. Well, almost. A small announcement to make and Barney to de-tick. Yep, you couldn't make it up, but we managed to find a critter on our walk today. My thanks, though, to Hannah Gimblett, Chris Harrison, Gabrielle Matola, and Charlie Phillips, mpb.com, and all those who are patrons. Sincerely, hand on heart, thank you, which you can join through the link on the website, photographydaily.show. And for those wonderful supporters who are, tomorrow is the More Show, number 99. We talk Lightroom in Tales from the Purple Palace, which is a hotel, falling from the skies like a piano. And as photographers, are we ever off duty? That's what we're talking about tomorrow. Next Friday, I'll be chatting with 7 Agency's Ed Cashy about social media and his new newsletter. And of course, more about his photography. I mean, we have 4 decades of pictures and stories to choose from after all. Music today from the wonderful artlist.io. Links and further research to what you've heard will be on the show page today, and you'll find a handy link in your podcast player app to that. And thank you to Neil Ford for your engineering in the tech department, Emily Renier for your eyes in our Facebook group, and Andrea Gilpin for making sure Instagram is engaging. And I look forward to photographing with you, hearing from you and talking with you next time.
This way, pups. Come on. Come on, pups. He's been so good today. Barney, you've been so good. It's getting very warm now. This is like a PPS, as I forgot to mention it during the show. I'll mention it again next week because some people, not you, obviously, but some people tune out at this bit. They're not there at the end. But for those that are still here, in a couple of weeks' time, I've got 2 weeks off the show. Yes, no Photowalk for 2 weeks. We've got holiday coming up and a little bit of vacation is needed, a bit of recharging is required. And I might well, you know me, be recording a Photowalk while I'm in my different destinations. I can't leave you, can I? No. But for those that are members of the Patreon, we will have Saturday mornings will still be happening, and there'll be some special Photowalks. It'll be a Photowalk more, where we take a walk and listen back to some of the guests, some of the most inspirational things that they've been saying over the last couple of years, a bit like we do on the Photowalk, but slightly more featured parts of the interviews. Does that make sense to you, Barn? He really couldn't give a monkeys. He wants to get to the car. It is getting hot now. Right, PPS done. Tick on the agenda. All done.
Photography Daily is a Loading Zone production.